But Hinduism does have ancient traditions and texts. The main one is called the Rig Veda. Composed between roughly 2000 and 1500 BC, it's a collection of hymns in Sanskrit, the oldest of the Indo-European languages. It contains about 1,023 hymns devoted to everything from creation to the gods and the cosmos. The origins of the Rig Veda and Sanskrit lie in the so-called Aryan peoples of Central Asia and southern Russia. These semi-nomadic peoples started coming into India from the northwest after roughly 2000 BC. They brought with them the sacred language of Sanskrit and a pantheon of nature gods whom they called Devas, or Shining Ones. Now, the Vedic pantheon is associated largely with forces in nature. Some examples include Dios Pitar, the sky god, Agni, the fire god, and Indra, the warrior god. So if we compare it, the Vedic pantheon is actually very similar to those of Greece, Rome, and the Nordic peoples. And like all ancient pantheons, the gods demanded sacrifice. Hinduism early on acquired what we would call a sacrificial cult, and this was crucial. Sacrifices had to be made to the gods, and they usually consisted of animals, fruits, cereals, ghee, and milk. Now think about it. Why were sacrifices offered? Well, of course, to please the gods, and the gods in turn would maintain order and balance in the universe. So sacrifices, in a way, were performed to avert chaos. Now, these sacrifices over centuries developed into very complex, elaborate rituals, sometimes growing out of control with dozens of priests, specifically set rituals, timings, and offerings. Yet there were other reasons why sacrifices were made. One was otherworldly. It was to keep and look after the souls of the departed family lineage in the afterlife. Pleasing the gods and praying for the departed, it was hoped, would gain one's family wealth, health, power, glory, and victory over their enemies. Now, there are two cosmological and philosophical concepts that are crucial to Hinduism. They inform both the cosmic worldview, but also, as we'll see, the caste system itself. The first is called dharma. It translates roughly as duty, or what one needs to do. Dharma is a loose term to convey the idea that doing what is required of you is a way not only of maintaining domestic order, but also of maintaining the natural order of the universe. And dharma can be applied loosely to many things. But in India, it mostly relates to family, caste, and occupation. The second cosmological and philosophical concept is karma, or what we would call the ethical law of causality. It's the belief that every action has a consequence. So if you do something good, you'll be rewarded. But if you do something bad, you'll be punished. But in Hinduism, it's different. It may not be in this world, but more likely in the next world. This relates to the third concept, called samsara. This means roughly the migration of the soul. The Abrahamic religions all have a sort of one-shot approach to life. You have one life and you better make the best of it. But Hinduism believes in reincarnation and that the soul goes through endless lives until it attains perfection, when it achieves bliss or nirvana. Now, let's turn to caste. We've all heard of caste. What is caste exactly? The word caste originally comes from the Portuguese word, casta. And don't worry, we'll discuss the role of the Portuguese before the British later. There's no equivalent for this word in any Indian language. But the term which best captures what Westerners think of caste is the Sanskrit word varna. Varna is what we call the fourfold division of Indian society, which itself is based upon the early passages in the Rig Veda. The universe is divided into four parts. First are Brahmins, associated with the head and with speech. They are the priestly caste, who are literate and whose duty it is to keep the sacred knowledge of the Vedas in Sanskrit. They are considered the most ritually and physically pure. Next are Kshatriyas, or the arms. They are the warriors and rulers, whose duty it is to fight, protect, and administer the day-to-day orders of humankind. Third are the Vaishyas, or the thighs. They are the traders and merchants of society whose duty it is to keep the material aspects of life flowing and in regular order. Last are the Sudras, or the feet. They are the servant class whose duty it is to clean, prune, remove waste, and do menial, often unskilled labor. Now, below these four varnas are who we call the untouchables, or Dalits. They are actually considered avarna, or without caste, and they are regarded as filthy and ritually and spiritually polluted. They are considered, for all intents and purposes, beyond the pale of the caste system. And this same categorization would apply for tribal groups known as Adivasis, who are not part of the caste system. They are seen as beyond it. Now, this whole hierarchy is based upon the notion of ritual purity and pollution. The higher the caste, the more pure ritually, spiritually, and physically one is. But there's another component to the fourfold caste hierarchy. It is called jati. Jati means birth. It's a subdivision in a way within each fourfold varna caste. It also means family. It can refer to region and occupation within a varna category. In fact, this is the most referenced marker of caste identity in India historically. So, for example, there are Saraswat Brahmins who trace their heritage from the Saraswati River. And there are also Chitpavan Brahmins, whose jati name means pure of mind. Some jatis within a varna are more respected than others, and unsurprisingly, some see themselves as better than others in their varna peers. Now, let's bring karma and dharma back into our discussion. Both karma and dharma, in a way, provide cosmological incentives for caste as a whole hierarchy. I mean, think about it. What might happen if you don't perform your dharma? Say, as a Brahmin, you marry an untouchable. In this world, you dishonor your family and its ancestry. And you might be punished in this life and the next. Karma and dharma act as cosmological incentives for the caste system. Bad behavior means demotion in the system. If you do poorly, you may be reborn as a lower caste, or worse, a slug. But proper dharma can lead to a life as a Brahmin or even a king. And this whole incentivized system informs a general Indian adherence to some form of non-violence, or ahimsa, which we will later see Gandhi adopted to battle the British. Since the soul migrates, the soul can end up going up or down. The higher up you go, the closer you get to attaining nirvana or bliss. But going down means you get thrown down the ladder. And getting thrown down the ladder means a fly could be, in theory, your uncle. You never know. So in theory, but not always in practice, as we'll see, Hinduism is somewhat averse to the taking of life, the needless taking of life. But again, this is in theory. As we know and we'll see, Hindus are not explicitly prohibited from taking life. So a lot of caste is about family honor and the honor of one's ancestors. Let's now turn to these caste families and see how they were internally organized. Indian families are kind of like mini corporations. The Indian family is, in theory, organized like a company, but only for ownership of property and land. Most Indian families were extended with 3 generations or more, and the eldest male is the equivalent of the CEO. Now, there are major gender differences within families. Males traditionally are the shareholders. Women are not. Males get property inherited in equal shares, but women don't. So this is kind of like a gendered partition of inheritance. So the Indian family is undoubtedly patriarchal, but it has limits. The eldest male's authority is not unlimited. Unlike in Western Europe, where the eldest male was usually the sole inheritor of land and property, in India the property was often divided. This meant that internal family feuds over who would get daddy's wealth rarely happened. Eldest males couldn't write wills to choose favorites, so their seeming dominance of the family was, in fact, much more tempered than compared to Europe historically. But the dominance of males in the family is really still seen in marriage. Here, females are given as gifts to a groom's family. Males remain members of their original family. It might seem symbolic, but it carries a lot of substantial difference.